Let me begin with a powerful truth. Your greatest advantage in life is not strength. It's not money. It's not charm. It's awareness. Because when you can see clearly, you can decide wisely. And when you decide wisely, you live powerfully. Now, this isn't about suspicion. It's not about control. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about understanding human behavior. When emotions shift, behavior shifts. When behavior shifts, patterns change. And when patterns change, a wise person pays attention. So let's talk about awareness. Let's talk about psychology. Let's talk about the subtle shifts that reveal deeper stories. Not so you can accuse, but so you can understand. Not so you can react, but so you can respond. Here are 8 signs that may reveal something deeper beneath the surface. 1. A sudden emotional distance. People don't withdraw physically first. They withdraw emotionally. If warmth turns into cold politeness, if connection turns into obligation, if intimacy turns into avoidance, something has shifted internally. Emotions are like seasons. When the climate changes, it shows. 2. Overcompensation with kindness. Sometimes guilt doesn't hide. It compensates. Sudden extra sweetness, unexpected gifts, unusual praise. When behavior spikes beyond its natural rhythm, ask yourself why. Human psychology often tries to balance internal discomfort with external generosity. 3. A change in energy. Energy tells the truth before words do. A woman who is internally conflicted may seem distracted, restless, unsettled. You may notice she's physically present but mentally elsewhere. Energy doesn't lie, it leaks. 4. Guarded technology. Behavior. A relaxed mind has relaxed habits, but when someone becomes unusually protective of their phone, tilting the screen, changing passwords, taking calls in private, that's not proof of betrayal, but it is proof of privacy increasing. And increased privacy often follows increased secrecy. 5. Altered physical affection. Affection tells a story. Some people withdraw after giving themselves elsewhere. Others become unusually passionate, almost proving something. Both extremes can signal internal conflict. The key is not the action, it's the sudden change. Consistency is honesty's best friend. 6. Defensive reactions to simple questions. A calm heart answers calmly. But when ordinary questions spark sharp defensiveness, when curiosity is treated like accusation, when conversation feels like confrontation, there may be something beneath the surface. Guilt often hears attack where none exists. 7. Subtle changes in routine. New habits, new timing, new priorities. When routine shifts without reasonable explanation, psychology suggests there's a new influence somewhere in the picture. Behavior always follows interest. Always. 8. Your intuition gets louder. And here's the most important one. Your intuition. If something feels different, it probably is. Not because you're paranoid, not because you're insecure, but because human beings are designed to detect shifts in patterns. And when you've paid attention long enough, you know what normal looks like. Now, here's the part most people miss. This isn't about catching someone. It's about understanding yourself. Because if you live in constant suspicion, you'll destroy what might be healthy. And if you ignore every signal, you'll stay blind where you should be aware. The mature man does neither. He observes, he evaluates, he communicates, he sets standards. And here's the real lesson. You don't control someone else's loyalty. You control your standards. You control what behavior you accept. You control whether you stay or walk away. And when you become a man of value, emotionally strong, purpose-driven, disciplined, you don't chase reassurance. You attract respect. Psychology teaches us something powerful. People rise or fall to the standards we set and the standards we tolerate. So instead of obsessing over signs, work on becoming the kind of person who commands honesty. Because when you are grounded, self-assured, and purpose-filled, 2 things happen. 1, you recognize red flags early. 2, you're never afraid to walk away from what doesn't align. And that, my friend, is real power. Awareness without bitterness, strength without anger, confidence without control. Watch patterns, trust intuition, Communicate clearly. Stand firm. Not because you fear betrayal, but because you value yourself. And when you value yourself, everything else becomes clearer. Awareness is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop, especially in relationships. It is not about becoming suspicious or constantly looking for problems. It is about learning to observe patterns calmly and objectively. Suspicion is emotional and reactive. Awareness is thoughtful and disciplined. One weakens trust unnecessarily, while the other strengthens understanding. In human behavior, change rarely happens without a cause. When emotional tone shifts, when communication patterns alter, or when energy feels different, there is usually a reason behind it. An educated and mature mind does not jump to conclusions. Instead, it gathers information, reflects, and seeks clarity. This approach builds confidence because decisions are based on observation rather than insecurity. Awareness also requires emotional control. When you are centered, you can notice subtle differences without letting your imagination take control. You begin to separate facts from assumptions. You understand that patterns tell a story over time, not in isolated moments. This mindset prevents unnecessary conflict and promotes healthier conversations. Most importantly, awareness keeps you empowered. Instead of reacting out of fear, you respond with wisdom. Instead of accusing, you communicate. Instead of doubting yourself, you trust your ability to evaluate situations clearly. True strength lies in seeing things as they are, not as you fear them to be. When you cultivate awareness over suspicion, you create space for clarity, maturity, and growth in every relationship. Understanding female psychology requires maturity, balance, and respect. Human behavior is deeply emotional, and emotions often express themselves indirectly. When someone experiences internal conflict, such as guilt, confusion, or emotional detachment, it can surface through subtle behavioral shifts. The key is not to judge these shifts, but to understand what they may represent beneath the surface. For example, guilt does not always look like withdrawal. Sometimes it appears as overcompensation, extra kindness, unusual attentiveness, or sudden generosity. Emotional distancing, on the other hand, may show up as reduced affection, limited eye contact, or shorter conversations. Defensiveness can arise not because a question is offensive, but because it touches an internal discomfort. These are not accusations. They are psychological patterns commonly observed in human relationships. An educated perspective recognizes that women, like men, respond to emotional experiences through behavior. Stress alters tone, conflict affects energy, attraction changes attention. When you understand these psychological principles, you stop personalizing every shift and instead analyze them with clarity. This prevents unnecessary drama and promotes healthier communication. Maturity means observing without hostility. It means seeking dialogue instead of confrontation. It means asking questions with calm confidence rather than insecurity. When you approach psychology with respect, you elevate yourself. You begin to see relationships not as battlegrounds, but as spaces for understanding. Education in emotional behavior builds wisdom, and wisdom builds stronger, more conscious connections. Personal standards are the foundation of self-respect. In any relationship, the way you allow yourself to be treated sends a powerful message about how you see your own value. When your standards are clear, you do not need to control others. You simply decide what aligns with your principles and what does not. Too often, people focus on trying to change someone else's behavior instead of strengthening their own boundaries. But real power does not come from monitoring someone. It comes from knowing where you stand. When your values are defined, honesty, loyalty, transparency, you gain clarity. You no longer react emotionally to every situation because your decisions are guided by a strong internal compass. Self-respect also requires courage. It takes courage to walk away from behavior that repeatedly violates your standards. It takes courage to communicate expectations calmly and firmly. And it takes courage to choose peace over attachment when necessary. When you honor your standards, you protect your emotional health and build confidence. Inspiration grows from this principle. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you consistently accept confusion, you invite more confusion. If you stand for clarity and respect, you naturally attract those who value the same. Personal standards are not about pride, they are about alignment. When you align your actions with your values, you create relationships built on mutual respect rather than uncertainty. That is the essence of emotional strength. Emotional discipline is the quiet strength that separates reaction from leadership. In relationships, emotions can rise quickly: doubt, anger, insecurity, fear. But the ability to pause, breathe, and think before responding is a mark of true maturity. When you react impulsively, you surrender control to the moment. When you respond thoughtfully, you remain in command of yourself. Inner strength does not mean suppressing feelings. It means managing them wisely. If something feels off, you acknowledge the feeling without letting it explode into accusation. You gather facts. You observe patterns. You choose the right time and tone to communicate. This level of discipline transforms potential conflict into meaningful conversation. Calm leadership in a relationship creates stability. When one person remains grounded, tension often decreases. Instead of escalating situations with harsh words, you ask questions. Instead of assuming the worst, you seek clarity. Instead of demanding reassurance, you evaluate behavior over time. Emotional discipline protects both your dignity and the possibility of resolution. Inspiration lies in mastering yourself first. You cannot control another person's actions, but you can always control your reaction. When you cultivate patience, composure, and self-control, you become less shaken by uncertainty. You stand firm in your values without becoming aggressive or bitter. This inner stability makes you resilient. It builds trust in yourself. And when you trust yourself, you handle any situation with confidence, clarity, and strength. When you bring all these principles together, awareness over suspicion, psychological understanding with maturity, strong personal standards, and emotional discipline, you create a powerful foundation for any relationship. Awareness teaches you to observe without fear. Psychological understanding teaches you to interpret behavior without hostility. Personal standards remind you of your worth. Emotional discipline ensures that no matter what happens, you remain composed and in control of yourself. The true lesson is this: growth begins within. Instead of focusing solely on what someone else may or may not be doing, focus on who you are becoming. A person who is aware but not paranoid, educated but not judgmental, firm in values but calm in expression, strong in emotion but balanced in response. When you cultivate these qualities, you elevate every connection in your life. You communicate with clarity. You set expectations with confidence. You walk away when necessary without bitterness. And you stay when it is healthy without insecurity. In the end, inspiration does not come from uncovering secrets. It comes from building character. Because when your character is strong, your decisions are wise. And when your decisions are wise, your life, both in love and beyond, moves in the direction of respect, peace, and purpose.